Alright folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the wild landscape of Scotland, and today we're starting this episode under this magnificent ancient, which it was like a steam railway bridge at one time, and now it's the footpath between Montrose and St Cyrus up here on the east coast of Scotland. So here we are. I can actually hear a tractor or something coming down the road, so I'll step off the road here folks. But how cool is it to do the intro here underneath this old bridge? Just imagine the steam trains and stuff going over here. It's like a feat of engineering when you see a structure like this. Look at it, carves away around there. So even though I'm starting this adventure in front of this old viaduct, we're actually going to take a walk across the other side of the river, all the way over here and down the other side, to look at a couple of like World War II defences that were in place. There's some crazy like dragon's teeth along the coast, and also what must have been like a wee machine gun kind of lookout bitty. There's no much left of it now, but it's cool to document the slight traces of history even that's left in these places. Wow, it's so warm today folks. I've got this thin coat on just to keep the sun, so I don't get sunburnt too much. There's butterflies and stuff just fleeing about, and it's some mad summer conditions. It's like 22 degrees Celsius right now, and it's proper humid. And I've put the wellies on just in case there's ticks and stuff like that, and the long grass at the far side. It would have probably been a far comfier walk if I was in the trainers for this one, but yeah, it's still cool to go on these adventures like all times of year. So from here on the path folks, you can see the grand old sandstone railway bridge leading off across towards Montrose, but also at this side an even older road bridge, which is still the current main road here. And I think it was closed a couple of weeks ago because somebody had a crash on it or whatever, or a car went on fire or something like that. Because I was going to come here for a walk a few weeks ago and the road was literally closed. There was no way of getting through. Wow, check it out this time of year folks. All these bushes and stuff are fruiting. Check it out folks, you can actually hear this bush crackling in the sunshine, and that's because these little seed heads on the bush, they actually dry out, and then sometimes they just get to a stage and they go crack and you hear it. It's mad because I heard a few of them cracking, and now I've come closer, they're not doing it. You can hear how hollow they are. So this is quite a busy road here to my left hand side, and it's actually the coastal tourist route here in Scotland. So if you're ever on holiday, it's a cool drive going up the coastal road instead of the main dual carriageway road. The coastal road kind of just leads up through all the little towns and villages, and it's so picturesque. Most times of year it just looks incredible, but there's different things to see at different times of year. In the summer when it's like this, it's just mad like heat and everything's so like super overgrown. And this is the point in the path here where the footpath actually joins onto what would have been the old railway line. And the old steam engines would have been hurtling over here, and it's cool to walk over the like this bridge when it's not too windy, because often it's just so windy on a place like this. The North Sea is literally just like a mile from here, and this path should lead us along the old estuary, which I think is the North Esk. The North Esk River goes below this viaduct here folks. Check it out folks, this is where the old steam train would have been coming out onto this viaduct. And look, here's a path sign: St Cyrus 3 miles, John's Haven 7 miles, Montrose 4 miles, and Ferryden 6 miles folks. And that's basically the path we're on at this point. But just check out this incredible viaduct. Apparently the architect that designed this viaduct is the same guy that designed the one in Dundee, the famous Tay Bridge, which actually fell down into the River Tay, killing loads of folk on board a train. But like when you look at this one, it is starting to sag like the stonework will probably need renovated one day, but I don't know if they would have the finances to be doing stuff like that. Maybe one day this will just get closed off and you'll no longer be allowed to cross it, and it might even get like, it might fall down. It's a shame to see it. Check it out, folks, there's the wee Kia parked in there, and that's the road that takes you along past Steptoe's yard on to the St Cyrus Beach car park. Check this out, folks, down on the path here we've got an angler. Shout out if that's you out there fishing. And that's such a busy road, you can see all the cars going over there. And just think back in the 1700s when that was built, they couldn't have imagined that amount of traffic going over it, and even the size of some of the modern vehicles, the trucks and the tractors. When that was first built, it would have been a horse and cart going over it. And probably no that many horse and carts can. No like it is nowadays with the constant flow of traffic. And this here is actually the River South Esk, folks. Wow, this viaduct is so high up. Shout out to this couple that's out for a bike ride. This is actually a popular cycle route here along this old railway line, because the tracks actually take you, well, where the track used to be is a fine cycle route all the way into Montrose. And I used to cycle it quite a lot when I first got back into riding my mountain bike. No way, I can see the water's quite brown and peaty, and that's what you get in Scotland after quite heavy rain. You can hear the waterfall down there. And the path I'm going leads off down along this tree line and along to the river estuary where it joins the North Sea. And I just love this landscape, folks. Everywhere you look from the top of a viaduct like this, it just looks incredible. Just check how back in the 1700s they had built that across the river as well. Back then the architecture of this, like the masonry work and stuff like that, was just so incredible. Nowadays everything's built so plain and like boring compared to stuff like that. The reason it's got multiple arches in it, even away across there, is because often at times you get ferocious wild storms, and that allows the excess water to get across. But most days of the week, the river's just coming through these two bigger arches in the middle here. And then up on the horizon there's a massive, I think it's like where the malt barley or whatever, a huge company there, but that's the industrial lands that were within the Snoo as well. There's a tractor and trailer and an Arctic lorry way to cross over the viaduct here, folks. It's live action on the video. Wow, just think about the weight of one of those tractors compared to the original horse and carts that used to cross. That shows how like over-engineered a lot of those original structures were back in the day. The people that built stuff like those bridges were probably also building like castles and big mansions and things like that. A lot of the old masonry techniques you didn't see anymore on modern buildings like. And then what an incredible view looking up this way up the coast towards St Cyrus and John's Haven. Almost a misty air off the North Sea today. Anyway, let's head on to the other end of this. Here's a load of timber going over the bridge right now, folks. Once again, folks, we're walking about in a Scottish postcard. And the landscape at this time of year is just so cool. Now we've got a big, massive Fendt tractor down here with a Massey Ferguson square baler. And it's the next thing waiting to cross here. Shout out if that's you, out farming here today. Massey Ferguson 190 square baler. And this big queue of traffic here has probably been like waiting, stuck behind them. Check it out, folks, we're down at street level right now. We're back down at the main road. And this seems to be a popular fence for people advertising on behind me. Anyway, let's head on along here. This is a cool little path that goes underneath the big viaduct. but you can see how overgrown it is. Even sometimes popular walking routes can still be overgrown at this time of year. Places are just like a jungle. Just check this out, folks. What a grand display of stone masonry. You can see how the finer carved stones is up here, and then the ones on the columns are actually slightly rougher. And you sometimes see the markings on these old stones. It's like you get a hole in the middle at the top. You see it on railway constructions most commonly, and that was the type of apparatus that they lifted the stone with. It was like a pincer, so like the heavier the stone, the tighter it gripped it as it lifted. And like each of these stones were probably brought on a rail cart. They would come along and then like assemble the bridge one bit at a time, supplying themselves with the materials from the railway there that they were constructing. And it's just mad to think about those ancient times. They did so much, and they must have been so proud of their construction when they were finished, and then one day it all just got shut down. It was needed no more. But it's cool that it's still open as a footpath at least, and we can still tell the story of the history. But I can actually see the stones literally like missing out of there just above the arch. And you have to think, like, how long will that last standing right there with no maintenance? Just a crazy structure. I can't believe the size and the scale of it, folks. Anyway, let's head on to the World War II wonders. This is a mad little corner of Scotland, this, because there is so much history in one place. There's even the fishing heritage of this area, and some old abandoned boats along here at the path's edge. And I think there's even one of those big winches. They used to have often a winch for pulling the old fishing boats up out of the water. Just look at this, the way that ivy's growing up over this tree. Check it out, folks, there's some absolutely crazy wasp looking beasts around here, and I'm literally pushing through this jungle like environment, and just check it out. This is what I say when I mean things is too overgrown at this time of year often in Scotland. It's just crazy going through it. Wow, the different creatures and beasts that's around here. There's one of the old fishing boats within the long grass there, and I'm sure that matches the fishing boats which we see down at the old Bod and Lime kiln. So it must have been a Montrose boat maker, and that was kind of the size and the shape of the boats that they used to make. I can see a hornet, which is an unusual looking wasp. And like, I've not seen a lot of them ever, but there's definitely one here in front of me, and it's moving further down the path as I go. Wow, everything's so overgrown, folks. Check it out. Here's our next old boat, abandoned in the long grass. Just check it out, I'm in the middle of this crazy landscape. I believe this may have been an old ice house here, somebody told me. It's got a strange shape and a strange roof, but I believe it was covered with earth originally, like some of the other ice houses that we've seen on adventures. And yes, I've just about made it to the end of this path, and this is us now coming in. Look, there's a beetle on me, I don't know if it comes out on the camera. But yeah, this is us coming into the boundary line of what used to be the old like Montrose airfield. RAF history right here. We're stepping into it. From the days of the Victorian steam railways back there. Now you hate to imagine, all the way from World War I, from the creation of the RAF, this was actually one of their first of all operational airfields, and then it was a training airfield in World War II. And this is just insane to see. Like, this is the start of the Dragon's Teeth right here, and you still see these being used in modern day combat. It's to defend a piece of land and to push an enemy into an area which is controlled, or where you have like a machine gun or whatever aiming at. It's for the control of advancing like soldiers or machines. This slows them down, probably tanks and things like that. If the Germans ever landed on these shores, they would have such a tough time getting like onto the land with their equipment. But the thing with this area, that's the reason it's got so many Dragon's Teeth. It's because of the RAF connection in this area. And just look at this wee house sitting here. Kinnaber farm. And there's actually an interesting old Cold War microwave listening station along here, which I have visited on previous videos. It's the Kinnaber listening station, and it was linked with the British but also the US Air Force, and it was linked with Edzell, RAF Edzell Air Base, which is quite interesting. Like, there's so much history in this area, military and civilian. I love the style of this little house. I'm guessing it must have been some sort of house at a certain time, but now it's abandoned. Maybe an old fishery house or whatever. You can see the number of dragon's teeth here because they're all the way along the side, the whole way along this coastline. And actually, some of them has actually fallen into the estuary now. So many years have passed. And I can see at the other side there's crazy amounts of giant hogweed, which is an invasive species that you get here in Scotland. And the reason it's all along the riverbanks is because the seed spreads with the wind along the riverbanks, and it just takes over. And if you touch the leaves on that, there's little fibres go in and burn you, and you can actually get scars which will last your lifetime. Check out, folks, at the far side of the river there's 3 cows, little cafes, and they were all just trying to make their way down to the river's edge to get a drink, but they were sliding and slipping. And I've just seen a big heron take off. Some incredible scenes. The cow's now struggling to climb back up the hill, but it's not in the water, so it should be safe. Check out, folks, we've made it along this line of dragon's teeth right here, and you can see how the river is actually eroding away the land around them, and this is how they end up falling in. But you can see for even this one here, there's proper like nothing underneath its foundation right there. And that shows how the land shifts and changes over the years. And look at this, you can see the reinforcements they've used at a certain time before they poured the concrete. These were to hold them into the ground. And the one thing that defeats them in the end is Mother Nature itself. So many years have passed since these were put in. It's just incredible to see, but literally down the coast here there must be 200 of them potentially. There's just so many. Whoa! This is mad, folks. There's hundreds and thousands of flying ants right here on this rock. I really need to just get out of this, like off this rock right now. Hundreds and thousands of flying ants. What is that even about? You get some mad creatures at this time of year in Scotland. Just check this out, the dragon's teeth just continue along here. And I've seen videos recently of dragon's teeth working as they should, like in modern like warfare. It's still something to redirect the enemy. Funnel them in towards like your machine gun bunkers or whatever, or funnel them into like tank traps or whatever. It's just interesting to see how that was used here on the coast of Scotland back at the ancient times of war. And it looks like the tide must be quite far out. This is actually a tidal estuary here, and I think the river North Esk like raises up and lowers with the tide quite far inland. And I think that's often the time when they go fishing. It's when the tide pushes the fish back up the river. Oh, hey, look at this, there's a little hutty. I think this was maybe built for the fishing in this area. I can remember before I was a YouTuber, there used to be like a little 2-storey house over there, and it was still in pretty good condition. And then literally like they knocked it down. It's such a shame. It used to be a cool place to take a walk around, and it was one of the first like little abandoned houses that I ever explored. Yeah, look at this, it's been a little coastal hutty, most likely just built for storage. Asbestos roof on it. That's how often people like would want nothing to do with it nowadays. There's so many restrictions and stuff when they're trying to deal with that. But that would be such a nice site for a little beach hut. You could sit with your binoculars and just look at all these geese out here on the water just now. I believe these are Canadian geese. Like, all the seagulls have just gotten flagged and flown away, but the geese were just standing solid right there. They didn't get a fright at all. Yeah, the thing you have to watch with this coast, it can be underwashed and eroded away, so if you go too near the edge it can fall away. Look at all these geese in the middle. And the seagulls are circling. And you can see how potentially these dragon's teeth here have actually been moved after the war. Wow, this is such a cool spot. All these dragon's teeth are actually down in the water, but it just continues all the way along to the edge of what is Montrose Beach, which is like 3 or 4 miles long the whole way up past Montrose, as far as Ferry Den. And then at this far side is actually St Cyrus Beach, which is another incredible Scottish beach. It goes on for probably like 3 miles north until you get to the top where, oh, I can't believe it, look at this, there's so many flying ants on here as well. They're absolutely crawling about, fleeing. The whole rock here is just moving. Whoa, I'm not staying near that because they're coming over to see. That's so creepy, folks. Why are all those flying ants on the rocks? There must be something like, I'm not even sure, that those flying ants are attracted to sitting on these rocks. And I don't know if these were like inland tank traps, maybe leading across and they've been bulldozed, or these ones here might have been dumped from a different area in this site. Often, as well as tank traps, they used to dig quite deep ditches, which were also like for catching the tanks. Like, there's different ways of making like these traps and things like that, but it's fascinating to see the way they're put over the land. And that's what I love seeing, the way they did things like this. It's still on show today for us to, like, we can really appreciate how much work went in to the defence of the country back then. And like, really, to climb a bit on them, I was going to sit up on top of one, like chill out, but quite literally there's just hundreds of flying ants on these things right now. It's like a capital city for the things. Wow, look at them all. You can just imagine this rougher bit here would have been under the ground. And the crazy thing here, this was maybe where they were designed to be in 2 rows even, because I can see there's a row out in the water, which must have been the edge of land. But sometimes they would have an area like this, which then was defended a different way. Maybe because there's a river estuary coming in. That's the reason they shaped the tank traps like this. Yeah, they're just massive big nuggets of cement. And they probably like planned it out strategically where they were put. It's just insane. It's always the amount of them here that blows my mind. It's not just like 2 or 3, there's literally probably hundreds up this coast. A lot of them in Scotland end up getting covered from the pebbles or washed away in the water. Whoa, here's a huge bumblebee coming my way, folks. Yeah, I'm thinking about heading a different way out of here than what I came, because it's a fun walk, and I proper had to battle through some mad overgrown conditions on the way in. And I'm also wanting to look at this little, what must have been a wee machine gun nest. So if anybody had managed to breach this coastal defence here, they would go slightly further inland. Maybe their tank would get stuck in a ditch there, and then the machine gun bunker at the far side there would open up on them. Yeah, because that wee machine gun nest that we're going to see, it actually overlooks this whole area, which is quite interesting to think about. And just imagine back at that time, there was probably somebody stationed in there with like a bar, or who even knows what type of gun back at that time. This is mad, folks. These summer conditions, the heat is just radiating from the ground right now, and it's just so humid. Often in Scotland it gets like that with the hot weather, the air just becomes thick. Yeah, some of these tank traps are way over here as well. It's just, no way, look at that. That was a magpie there that just flew away across the... I'm seeing a lot of magpies out flying about these days. So check it out, folks. You can see how we've now come out onto this kind of flat plain at the back of the sand dunes, and this is where the little machine gun bunker was. And it could be hard to find it at this time of year, because I'm not even sure exactly where it was. I know it's just in this area somewhere. But yeah, the landscape here, you can see how far they would have seen, and they would have gotten an excellent shot on anybody that was trying to invade the land. I often imagine what it must have been like back at that time for the soldiers patrolling in these areas, or the soldiers stationed here maybe every day for years. It's so interesting to think about that, like the history, which is just on your doorstep often. Check it out, folks. I was just thinking I couldn't find it, and then look at this. We've rediscovered the old machine gun bunker, or definitely defensive bunker here. Just look at it. It's got these openings and these lookouts. This could even date back to World War I, the Great War, because that's how long there's been military activity here in these wild lands. And just look at it, you can see how the rebar is roughly exposed, and the shape of these windows is designed to help with bullet ricochet, so that the bullets, it's hard for the bullets to go in, but it's easy obviously to shoot out. And you can see how this has had multiple openings all the way around, and you can just imagine how the landscape may have looked when this was constructed. This may have also had some sort of top piece on it which has crumbled away. I reckon it must have had some sort of cement dome or some kind of roof, and you can just see the skeleton of this history, folks. And this kind of links in with the Dragon's Teeth and the coastal defences that we saw along there. Looking out over this wild level piece of land, this would have been a strategic position on the potential battlefield, because Scotland and that and Britain didn't even know where Germany was going to invade, so they made incredible defences at all places. All possibilities were covered, and in the end it paid off. And just check this out, it's mad that things like this are just abandoned in the long grass here, and they're just forgotten about pretty much. Like every year the grass and shrubs grow up through it thicker and thicker. Every year the cement crumbles away more and more, and the history is just slowly getting lost to nature and time. And videos like this often just keep the history alive. There may have been 1 or 2 people stationed in here, and if it was World War I, they may have even just been sitting in here with a rifle. Don't know if you can hear that noise. There's always an incredible loud noises come from the steel works and stuff at Montrose. Sometimes you hear them moving around the big bits of metal, and that was what we heard there. It's often like when you hear it landing like that, you think, is Abdi alright? But anyway, let's look at this, folks. Here we are. History on the channel. I love having a rich variation of history. And now things are starting to become less overgrown at this time of year, so I'm going to start heading further into the wildernesses again and getting some of the coolest places, because I just love the adventure, and I just love telling the story of history with things like this. You just imagine them looking out there back in the day. You wouldn't have dared to probably come across this piece of land at a time of war, but also when this was an operational airfield, it must have been, you wouldn't have been allowed probably to come along here unless you were part of the fishermen and that owned this old fishing houses and stuff out here. I'm just thinking about going like a secondary route back, folks, but I'm still not sure like what direction. But stay tuned, the action adventure's not over yet. Yeah, but just look at that there. I love the character with the old lookouts, the old cement. I better take a photograph of this before I head away. So check that out, folks. Once again, one last view of this incredible ancient structure, and you can just imagine it with the cement dome roof. The wee door must have been at one side of it. Probably soldiers stationed there 24 hours a day. Maybe looking out with their binos across this land. Maybe waiting on updates from other little coastal positions dotted around the coast here. Most likely in World War I they would have had like some people like running between these locations, I would think, updating with like messages and things like that, because those smaller little lookouts and coastal defences would have had no electronics and stuff like that in them. It was more just 1 man or 2 men with guns just to slow the approach and maybe get the word out. Another interesting point, folks, there may have even been like more of these little machine gun bunkers and little machine gun nests all across this land. But every year the sand dunes change and move so much. You can even see how that one is still like, well, just about fully gone within the sand and the grass. I'm just hoping I can get across this way at some point and take a path back that general direction. Over at the far side here is where the old house used to be. It was like a wee 2-storey house and I can still see the old loading bank still outside where they would have loaded the fish onto the old lorry, because I believe it was like a fishery house, which the fishing in this area will predate the wartime activities for sure. This is insane, folks. All over the ground, all over the floor, there's just thousands of ants, flying ants. Look at that one, it's attacking, they're attacking a beastie, there's two of them. What? Look at it, the whole floor is just covered, they're landing on me and everything. There's just, whoa! There's something serious going on here, folks. There's a massive swarm of flying ants right there, folks. I've never even seen that in my whole life. Like, what is even going on today? We've just literally witnessed something crazy there. Like that, I would be thinking, oh, there must be an ant's nest there, so they're all flying about it. But that doesn't explain all the hundreds of the ones that we saw at the other side as well. Today must be some special day for the flying ants. It must be ideal conditions or whatever. Wow, I was shook. When I looked up and realised I was within a cloud, I just ran. And I can't believe the way they were attacking that beast. No way, look at that wee butterfly. It's probably not even going to land now, folks. Look at this as well. You get the bonny heather down here, folks. Not only up on top of the wild Scottish hills, but you get it down here, even at sea level. Big areas of the beautiful purple heather. And this is actually cool because on the horizon we can see the old Cold War microwave station that I spoke about. But again, what I was just thinking, I should be taking that path over there, because that's the one that goes my most like direct route. And one day we'll come back for sure and do an in-depth video here at the Cold War microwave station, folks. This is insane, folks. There's tons of grasshoppers, and there's one right there in the middle of the frame. That's a grasshopper live on the video right there. And just check it out. See it jumping? See it try to jump, folks, that's insane. Look at it there next to the stick. Whoa, it's jumping away. You get a lot of them in Scotland. It's just the wee grasshoppers. When it comes to this later time in the summer, they get more calm and they jump, they even sit in your hand. Whereas at the start of the season, they're proper like shy and you'll hardly even see them. Quite often I've noticed as well, they're quite green when they first hatch out and when they're jumping. Whereas now at this time of year, they've got that crazy dark brown, almost like a black pattern on them. But there's just hundreds of them. As I'm walking along, I'm just seeing them all jumping. Whoa, I nearly stood on one. That is just insane. It's like crazy how they move. Seemingly some of the first radars in the UK was actually tested over in an area near here. But this is actually quite a random piece of land here because nothing actually grows on it very well. There's just some heather and that incredible licheny stuff. And there's no other areas of the sand dune like this. But one time I was exploring with the channel DJ and we actually noticed there's been like some sort of dump in this area at one time. Because there was big, like, it must have been stuff that was taken off the... Whoa, there's so many ants here once again, folks. Kind of what it is, they're all over the sand and stuff like that. I need to just make my way around this lichen area. See, this is it, I'm reading the land right now, folks. I'm moving around nature, trying to let nature get on with itself. But this area here, I wonder if at a certain time there's been something dumped here and it's gone into the ground, preventing the grass from growing. Because this area, like I say, it's been military since the days of like World War I. And it's just mad to see that. This whole like wasteland with the old Cold War listening station in the foreground. Back at that time there would have been a massive mast there. A huge deal. And that had its own substation and stuff like that built into the building because they required so much power. And I remember there was people who actually got in the comments who were stationed there and told me the exact history of it and how it was linked to the Edzell Air Base. And that's how I can bring this local history to you on the channel. Whenever I learn more things about places I've been, I always update the viewers. And it's crazy to keep all this local history alive with the stories of these wee buildings and the reason they were originally here. So as we scout the perimeter of this incredible old location here, the original mast was actually within the big fence line, and the mast's guy ropes were held within those smaller fences on the outside. Even that was protected, and the big fence was actually earthed to ground, so it must have been like in any situation there was no interference in the signal they were receiving, or even maybe putting out. But another interesting thing, these massive things that look like rocks in front of us are actually old, what must have been some sort of mast base as well, maybe moved here from another area. But this whole area, like I say, was used for testing radar and stuff for the early days of its creation. And there is various sites like this over this Montrose area. Check it out, folks, this is a massive pile of cement and bricks, most likely from one of the wee like World War II buildings or whatever that was in this area. Not unless there's been like a farmer's shed or whatever, but I think from the strong thick cement construction, it looks to me like it's been one of the military buildings with some of the red brick. Check this out, folks, look at the size of these massive cement pillars right here. I don't know if these were holding up some sort of mast or maybe some fence. Sometimes the early radar systems were actually like chains draped across things like this. Who even knows the potential of some of this history? Some of these loops were maybe at one time holding something in place. So interesting to see. And another thing, I can see the corrugated iron mark where the cement's been poured over like a facing or a kind of like a shell they make with wood and corrugated iron, then pour on the cement, and I can see evidence of that all over here. But yeah, there's been a fair building, and I'm not sure what these pillars have been. See, maybe they've been some sort of lights even, or anything, because look, there's actually been potentially wire or cable going up the middle of them. Yeah, so they're maybe not even as old. It could be old remains of like a farm shed or a farm building, but it's just interesting to see it here on the World War II site. Document it just in case there is some connection. This is one of these occasions, folks. I'm on a path right now that I've never been on before in my life. I can see there's a wee farm and stuff out the back here. It's quite wild land, and there was a wee path heading that way, but I'm not sure. I think that looks like it goes towards the farm, so I'm thinking I'll go around this way and try and get back to the main old railway line, which I'm going to follow back the St Cyrus direction, folks. But yeah, the mission's still on. I'm often imagining how these wild lands looked back in the 40s when the war was on, and this was a thriving airfield up here. And then into the Cold War, places like this were built. This area has always been used. Such a hub of history right here, folks, and I just love to explore it. I often just wonder like what's around the corner, or like were any of these big holes created for defence, or like what was even going on in these places back in the day. A lot of history is just gone, and often if it was little wooden buildings or whatever from the First World War, they'll just be totally gone now, and it's often just the lie of the land which can show us the history. Sometimes once you look a bit closer at a level bit, whatever, you realise there's remains of like a wee building, and it's often interesting to see. So I'm now heading away from what would be the North Sea in that direction. Montrose is up there, and I'm kind of heading this way, and I've just noticed there's a ducat in the field there, or what looks like a ducat, which I've never even noticed before, and that's a cool wee historical wonder that we'll hit a visit one day. And it looks like there is like a bit of a mansion house there, and often mansions at a certain time were obligated to have a ducat because the Navy used to actually use one of the ingredients from the pigeon's dung for their gunpowder. So that's why a lot of the old British stately homes have got the ducats. But that one looks like it's in the middle of a field there, and it's mad just to always keep finding new wee nuggets of history like that. I had no idea it was even there. This is just some random little path that I've taken. It's just heading in the general direction that I need to go. Mission update, folks. I've just literally battled through some long as anything grass, and now the path's actually bared round this way, which is the opposite way to where I need to be going really. But I'm so far up this path now, we're keeping going And I'm just going to head up and see where it lands. The main road's actually over at the far side of this field. You can see the golden barley here growing in front of us. That shows the summertime conditions that we're dealing with on this adventure, folks. Check it out, folks, we've now made it back. The path ended up looping right around that forest pretty much. I must have walked right along that back, then round this side. And I was half anticipating going into the field, thinking about it, but then I didn't bother. I followed the path. And this is actually the main road, which featured recently on a video when I went to an abandoned graveyard hidden in the wildlands at the far side there. That's actually the episode where I tore my trousers. My new trousers that I got, I was jumping over the fence and I slipped and my trousers got torn, folks, and that was on that adventure. And luckily that was probably a couple of months ago, just before the summer. I had to pretty much go right around behind that house and stuff at the far side. It was a mad mission, but it's crazy just to think about all these wee historical nuggets that's on the landscape here, so close to each other. And I'll have to remember about that old ducat which lies in that field down in the hollow. It's always interesting to keep finding these little places and seeing them in the lands. So the footpath from Montrose doesn't exactly follow the old line, like the old railway line, because I can see it there where the land's built up. It leads on into that private property or right past it. So they've made the public footpath just kind of out with that area. And I think further up ahead it kind of loops around next to the main road until we get back round next to the ancient viaduct. I'm just loving this summertime conditions today, folks. It's just mad seeing the wild landscape, the history, but also the animals and the nature within it. It's just crazy at times. So this has been a fair walk today around this circuit, folks, in this humid conditions, but it's been good. I can hear the main road down here. It's quite busy. Different times of day I think it gets super busy, but on a weekday kind of road like that's just non-stop. And this is where the path rejoins the route of the old steam railway. It's so hot today, folks. I'm looking forward to a refreshing mango rockstar when I get back to my car. Just look at this, it's like a wild meadow of nettles. Wow, it's mad landscapes, folks. Often in Scotland you get areas like that. It's like a small pocket of an extreme environment, and then like a wee bit further along it's just completely different. And this is the area down here. At the start of the video we came over the viaduct and went down the hill. We've done a complete circuit documenting all that interesting history and landscape along the way. Yeah, I'm gassed out. We've managed to make it back around here. These are actually pretty good roads as well if you're on a mountain bike or whatever, because it's all pretty level. There's no extreme uphills or downhills. Just check out the landscape of this. Another thing that makes it special is the fact that they've built it on a corner like that. The trains would have probably had to throttle back as they came through that gully there, and then they would have cornered around here. There would be more stress on the outer corner, or the outer edge of the corner I should say. You can hear that trailer clattering its way along the road. It is interesting to see how the bridge has got bricks and stones missing on the side of it. You just wonder how long the structural integrity will stay standing here. Like, already you can kind of see one side's drooping in a lot of ways. It's like the stone's just gradually changing shape year on year. That's like any old building or structure. The main road undergoes constant maintenance. Look, there's another one of those flying ants. Don't know if you can see it on the railing. There's just so many of these ants flying about today, folks. They're like red flying ants and they're everywhere here at the coast. Absolutely insane. Anyway, I'll update you once I'm at the far side of the bridge. This has been such a cool adventure. There's been stuff like this the whole way along. It's like mad. Even just seeing this viaduct's a special thing, and then add everything else to it. It's just cool. So shout out to that gentleman there. He's out. He said his son's over there fishing or something. He's just out here taking photos, I think, and just no wonder, look at this landscape. But yeah, if any of these folk I meet along the way see the video, then shout out to you. So I think this was just obviously the single rail line coming over this viaduct into this bit of land here, and then the next stop would have been up the coast to St Cyrus, and there was just so many bridges and crazy things that they built back then for the railway. And there's another incredible viaduct, even higher and more majestic, further up the coast at the Den of Fenella, and I actually visited there, I think it was maybe a couple of years ago now. I'll link the video at the end of this one. I think it's quite a long video. When we ended up there, we walked miles up the coast and ended up at the Den of Fenella, and it was just crazy. The sun had set by the time we even got back. But that was another interesting detail of the railway heritage here on the east coast. There's just so much to explore. I was always going to go back to the Den of Fenella one day and walk up the burn to the incredible waterfall. So check it out, folks, we've just come back around this corner to the original location where we started this video, under this grand stone structure of the viaduct. And what another incredible adventure it's been, not only in history but into the wild landscapes of Scotland. And it's coming into the time of year I'm going to start doing hopefully daily videos and stuff again, because now it's becoming less overgrown. It's cool just to go full send into nature, and you know how it is on this channel, folks, we end up in the craziest of situations at times. Today was almost like that on some of those little back paths and stuff like that. Those flying ants and all the other amazing history. I love seeing that wee machine gun post and imagining the history of that. Even the soldiers or the army who left those dragon's teeth up the coastline. The threat of war back then, the uncertainty. They did all they could with the defences to protect the land. And then the story with this bridge as well, opening up the industry here on the east coast of Scotland to St Cyrus with a train line leading its way up the coast. And here it is today, the skeleton of the history, folks. It's now no more than a footpath leading over this incredible landscape. Shout out to that Austrian couple there that's driving through here on holiday. They must just be blown away by what they're seeing, just like me. Even the locals around here are impressed often by the architecture and the stonework. And then that even older viaduct, still ferrying traffic from one side of the river to the other every day. Anyway, I'm ending this one here, folks. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another adventure wherever I end up going.